Though the story of Elvis on New Year's Eve is a really good story, it's only one of many that I've managed to accumulate over my 75 years. That doesn't make me special. I think everybody has amazing stories in their life. Sometimes we don't recognize them as amazing stories, but I think they are if you think about them. I've always thought that any person in particular could write a pretty interesting book just telling the stories about their life. I think I could anyway, and I'm pretty sure you could too. It's actually what got me started on this YouTube channel in the first place, was a desire to get my stories, a record of my stories, so they aren't lost forever. Where they'll go, I don't know, but at least they'll be down and not lost. The last video I did was a slideshow of the cars that I've owned over the last 60 years or so, and in putting it together, I got to thinking about all the stories involved in all those different cars, and each one of those cars has a story attached to it that is part of my life. I'm sure you have those stories too, you know, about different events, different things in your life. And that was really the video on the cars is really what prompted me to do this video about stories. And one of the first stories other than cars that popped into my mind was the Elvis story on New Year's Eve. Putting that video together was kind of like trying to sort out photographs. I don't know if you've done that before or not. I've taken a lot of photographs over the years, and every once in a while I'll sit down and try to organize them, and I get so distracted with the stories involved with each picture that I never managed to get the pictures organized. A few years ago I came across an idea. I'm sure it was on the interweb somewhere, I don't know, couldn't tell you where, but it was called Project 365, and maybe you've heard about it. But the idea was to take a picture every day for the entire year. So at the end of the year you'd end up with basically 365 pictures about that year. And I tried to make the pictures that I collected something relevant to that day. And I'll tell you, when you put those all together at the end of the year, it's really something to view. You don't realize all the things that happen in a year. And it's a reminder of all of those events and everything that you've done. It's amazing everything a person does in a year. If you haven't done something like that, I'd suggest it. It's a lot of fun, and it doesn't take any time to take one picture a day, and then pick the one that or take several pictures a day. You know, I usually have a couple dozen a day. I don't know, but I picked the most relevant one, and then save that into a folder of its own. And at the end of the year, I had 365 pictures to put in a slideshow or display however you want to. And it's really fun. I tried one time too to set the alarm on my phone to ring at a certain time during the day and take a picture every day at that time, whatever I was doing at that time. But that didn't work out so well because it was pretty repetitious. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I was often doing the same thing I was doing the day before, so it really wasn't very interesting. But it was worth a try. The 365 one though is worth a try. I've tried journaling, and I've tried keeping a diary, and I just haven't been able to find the discipline to sit down and write like that every day. The pictures is more my style. When we go on a motorcycle trip, when Kathy and I go on a motorcycle trip, we usually journal that every day. When we get back to the motel from our ride, we'll sit down and write down the highlights and that. But that's just so if and when I get around to doing a video of the trip, then I have my notes to know where we went and what we did, and I don't miss anything that way. And the thing about stories is not all stories in your life are pleasant ones. There are bad things that happen too, but they're your stories. They're the stories that make up your life. So you don't want to lose those either. At least I don't. I don't know, some people, you hear people say, oh, I wish I could forget that event, or I wish I could forget that time in my life. Not me. I don't want to forget anything. I want to remember it all, the good and the bad. Call me crazy, I don't know. But those are the bad parts in your life are an equal part of your life. And you know, you get through them. So why would you want to forget getting through something like that? Working through a bad time. Why would you want to forget that? I don't know. You know, I would want to forget everything that went on before and after my back surgery when I was in my 40s. You know, it was not a very pleasant time, but it was part of my life, big part of my life actually. And getting through it, everything that went on before, after, during, you know, it's all part of the story. So it's one of the great stories of my life, even though it was pretty unpleasant. Same could be said about my prostate surgery. You know, that was pretty unpleasant too, but dealing with it, getting through it, all the events around it, you know, that's all part of the story. I don't want to forget that. I wouldn't want to relive it, but I don't want to forget it either. I'll take those bad stories right along with the good ones. I'll take the surgeries right along with the scuba diving with my Navy shipmates in Puget Sound and Elvis on New Year's Eve. I want it all. One of the things that concerns me about getting older is losing some of those memories. You know, that it scares me a little bit. Alzheimer's seems to run in my dad's family, so it's not a pleasant thing to look forward to. They say it's not hereditary, but I don't always believe they. So, but you know, hopefully get some of the stories down, either on video or written or something, and maybe it'll be a reminder at some point to bring back the memories that are fading or becoming lost. I know it's all part of the deal. Age-related memory loss is nothing new. You know, I'm experiencing some of that, you know, now already. I can't remember what I had for dinner yesterday. You know, I know that's a little different. So that's not really a story, but you know what I'm saying. The memory doesn't get better the older you get, put it that way. Yeah, some of the details and some of the stories that I do remember are gone already. You know, I don't remember some of the details surrounding some of the. Certainly remember the events and, you know, the high points and that, but some of the details are gone. I think that's natural progression of things. There are times that I wish I would have written things down back then, so I would be reminded of the details now, kind of like the journal during the motorcycle trips, so you don't miss anything, don't forget anything. You know, fortunately, I have a lot of stories, like most people. So what I lack in the details, I can make up in the quantity of the other stories. So it all works out. I'm kind of hoping my little channel here on YouTube finds its way in front of people that enjoy the stories or can relate to some of the stories that I have to tell. You can help me with that if you don't mind hitting that like button. That might help it get in front of somebody else that might have some interest in it. I'd appreciate that. And who knows, there may come a time in the future when a grandson or a great granddaughter or somebody comes across this information and they'll find it interesting. I'd love to hear some stories from my great grandfathers, my great grandmother. Unfortunately, those stories are long gone. So thanks for stopping by and listening to me ramble for a minute. If you've got a story you'd like to share in the comments, I'd love to hear it. Channel's still small enough that I read all the comments pretty timely in a timely manner. So feel free to leave a story if you like. And one more thing. Remember that Elvis concert on New Year's Eve back in 1975? Not too long into the concert, Elvis split the seat out of his pants and had to go off stage and do a costume change. That's kind of a highlight of the concert. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. Oh yeah, and up here or over here is the video on the cars that I was talking about earlier. Have a look if you like. Peace and joy.